Thank you. Okay, so we now have a second panel to explore this issue. So if I may invite up to the stage Mr. Jamie Ferguson, who's the Global Director for Climate Business. The Climate Business at IFC. Welcome, Jamie. And Mr. Jean-Pascal Boer to the stage. Where is Mr. There we go, Mr. Jean-Pascal. He's the Director of International Cooperation and Sustainable Urban Development at the Ministry of Construction and Housing and Town Planning in Côte d'Ivoire. Welcome. And Mr. Ali Mohammed Hassan, who's the Director of Environment at the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change in Somalia. Welcome, Mr. Ali. So, Jamie, if I can turn to you first. IFC is an investor, it's a capacity builder, it's a standard setter, and it's highly active in both residential and commercial real estate, and with a big focus in emerging markets. So from your vantage point, what are the key issues on real estate alignment to net zero in emerging markets, and what can be done to increase those financing flows for both mitigation and adaptation? Thank you.
Thank you very much and for including me on the panel, and well done everyone for making it to Friday afternoon. You're nearly there. So for those who don't know us, IFC is the private sector arm of the World Bank. We're the largest dedicated private sector development bank covering all emerging markets. In the area of climate finance, we committed just shy of 15 billion last year, which was about 46% of our book, and ever increasing. And green buildings is really important to us. Over the last 7 years, we've committed just shy of 12 billion, both directly through developers, but also significantly through banks, where we can help banks set up green mortgage lines. In addition to our money, from a sort of public good perspective, we originated the EDGE Green certification program, which is now used across 100 countries and has had about 70 billion of investment in certified buildings. And we're following that up with a building resilience index, which we're hoping will get the same scale to support increased resilience in the building stock. So your question, I think this is a little emblematic on a Friday afternoon, that to have a slightly smaller panel for a bigger problem. It's been said several times in the last couple of days that half the buildings that will exist in 2050 or 60, choose your number, don't exist today. Well, 80% of the extra buildings that are going to get built are going to be built in emerging markets. And 70% of those are going to be homes because they're needed desperately. So that's where the problem is. If it's a lot easier to green new build than it is, and to resilience new build than it is to refurbish, this is where our focus should be. And yet there's only 3 of us up here now rather than 6 before. So that's, a physical representation of it. Meanwhile, it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And IFC issued a piece of analytical work called Building Green just late last year, which identifies a 1.5 trillion investment opportunity in emerging markets in the coming decade in green and resilient buildings. So that's the scale. What's the nature of the challenge, and how is it different from the conversation you just heard? So firstly, the need. The need is massively and predominantly in affordable housing, homes, residential. Secondly, the nature of that housing is that it's typically self-build, and typically, in a lot of countries, particularly with my colleagues here with Africa focus, there's an insufficiency of formal building sector, and there's an insufficiency of long-term local currency capital and mortgages to fund that. So it's not just how do we do green build and resilient buildings, how do we create the supply and demand of a building industry in the first place. there can be codes or building codes or not building codes, and if there are they're not necessarily enforced, and sometimes they're reliant on legacy or picked up codes from elsewhere that may not work. The Indian building codes require a glass area that assumes Northern European sunlight levels. Go figure, right? So lots of work to be done, and I would argue, whereas Europe elsewhere has led with green building and is now saying, well, how do we make it resilient? We got to lead with resilient in emerging markets. This is where the brunt of the challenge is going to happen. So I don't want to preempt my colleagues, but I think it's worth saying what will happen in the coming decades in Somalia and in Côte d'Ivoire. Well, in Somalia, we're talking about 56 more days per year over 35 degrees centigrade. We're talking about a 25 centimeter sea level rise. We're talking about much heavier and more extreme rains and more rain as a whole by 2050. Côte d'Ivoire, we're talking about more days above 35 degrees centigrade. We're talking about 25 centimeter sea level rise. And different parts of the country will have more rain or less rain, but always more heavy. So, that is the reality by 2050. So what can we do? Not to, make it sound too challenging. What can we do? So there is plenty that can be done. Certification is powerful. It is, we've experienced with EDGE and others that, where there aren't building codes or capacity to enforce them, you can use banks as your proxy, right? So if banks are looking, if you can set up green building lines of finance that are certified, then effectively you're getting the incentives into that system. And if you can have pricing differentiation in that context, then it can move the market. There is room for regulatory encouragement and incentives, and not to be repetitive for those who were at the opening, where I spoke at the opening session, but there's some good, smart incentives which respond to the very human reality of building, the deeply societal and human realities of building that don't necessarily need to be financial, fiscal incentives. Peru's had great success by offering approvals for an additional floor if you're building green. Who doesn't want an extra floor? Argentina's had great success with having a faster approval process for permitting if you're building green. Who doesn't want a 3-month permit versus a 2-month permit? Larger lots in India. So there are a range of ways of doing it that aren't necessarily fiscal. We need the support of Germany and others on blended finance to help allow for differential pricing and to help create long-term mortgage offerings. And then we are experimenting at the moment in India, and if it works, we will take it elsewhere with a self-build version of the EDGE certificate, where we're financing we're building finance companies, mortgage companies who are providing very small loans for self-built homes. And we've simplified the EDGE certification program so that future homeowners can work with their contractors to get certified for that. And then again, on the resilience side, we're hoping adoption by the insurance industry will drive pricing incentives in that space. So enough from me, but the start of the conversation.
Thanks so much, Jamie. Turning to Jean-Pascal now. How is the situation in Côte d'Ivoire, and what actions are being taken there, and what policies are being put in place to drive sustainable urban development? Over to you. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup pour cette opportunité. Je pense que mon prédécesseur a emboîté le pas sur un certain nombre de réalités que nous vivons ou que nous vivrons dans quelques années. Alors, il faut dire que la Côte d'Ivoire aujourd'hui, comme beaucoup de pays africains, est confrontée à une problématique en termes de logement. Pour la Côte d'Ivoire spécifiquement, nous sommes à un gap de 800 000 logements aujourd'hui. 600 000 dans la capitale Abidjan, et c'est un taux qui se bonifie de 10% par an. Donc il y a un véritable besoin En même temps que c'est un problème, il faut voir ça aussi comme une opportunité parce qu'il y a du travail à créer derrière, il y a des entreprises à pouvoir développer un certain nombre d'initiatives. Et donc, il y a une vraie opportunité de migrer avec les nouveaux matériaux bas carbone. Parce qu'on n'a pas totalement fini de construire comme en Europe où il faut passer à la rénovation qui coûte cher. Donc, on a vraiment une opportunité à ce niveau-là. Au niveau du développement urbain, c'est une question qui est de plus en plus prégnante, qui nous amène aujourd'hui à être en train de réviser notre politique nationale urbaine. Et cette politique nationale urbaine ne va plus se limiter seulement aux différentes réglementations de planification, mais c'est surtout d'intégrer le volet du changement climatique et surtout de la transition écologique. Il y a plus d'agrégation au niveau des différents ministères qui interviennent dans les secteurs de l'urbain. Alors, sur la question spécifique de l'adaptation, de l'atténuation, il y a un certain nombre de mesures qui ont été prises. Si vous avez soutenu il y a 2 ans, non, 1 an en arrière, la Côte d'Ivoire a abrité la COP sur justement la lutte contre la désertification et la déforestation. Pour dire à quel point le gouvernement ivoirien est soucieux justement de pouvoir s'attaquer à ces problèmes-là. La Côte d'Ivoire connaît aussi une emprise de mer qui fait que la question de l'érosion côtière est aussi une préoccupation. Et au niveau des ministères en charge, il y a des actions qui sont menées justement à ce que les effets de l'érosion côtière ne soient pas très très difficiles. Abidjan, à cause, je veux dire, de ce que pendant 30 ans, l'État, avec la crise que nous avons connue, n'a pas vraiment adressé les questions du cadre bâti. Ça a été plutôt laissé à la main des sociétés privées. Et aujourd'hui, l'État est en train de reprendre la main. Ces sociétés privées n'ont pas forcément respecté la réglementation en place, au point que beaucoup de dysfonctionnements, beaucoup de malfaçons sont constatés. Et quand il pleut à Abidjan, tout le monde a peur parce que les inondations deviennent une vraie problématique. Récemment, on a dû déguerpir à notre corps défendant des populations, des zones à risque où elles étaient installées. Mais après, l'État, justement, pèse entre ce que veulent ou attendent les populations et ce que lui, en tant qu'État, a à faire pour pouvoir, bien entendu, protéger les tiens. Nous avons aussi nos CDN qui sont vraiment en train de se positionner avec, j'allais dire, beaucoup d'engagement. Il existe aujourd'hui un plan de partenaire avec les différentes parties prenantes. Donc, c'est-à-dire que les différentes parties prenantes en Côte d'Ivoire ont décidé, à travers un cadre, comment est-ce qu'on adresse la question. On a aussi une territorialisation de justement des CDN. Au niveau national, une stratégie, mais comment est-ce qu'au niveau des gouvernements locaux, comment est-ce qu'au niveau des communes, on traduit cela? Et donc, les maires sont de plus en plus impliqués. Et à ce jour, on a 6 ou 7 communes qui se sont dotées avec l'appui de ICLE de plans territoriaux municipaux. Donc, c'est aussi des dynamiques qui sont importantes à soutenir. Et le ministère de la Construction, du Logement et de l'Urbanisme, ainsi que le ministère de l'Environnement et de développement durable, qui depuis 6 mois se voit ajouter le nom de transition écologique, pour dire à quel point on a des réformes vraiment qui se mettent en place. Ils vont bientôt présenter dans le cadre du FEM 8, justement, un projet intitulé « Transition vers un environnement bâti net zéro en carbone en Côte d'Ivoire ». Donc c'est un peu aujourd'hui ce à quoi nous sommes en train de faire face. Et bien entendu, il y a des textes qui ont été pris pour réguler le secteur de la construction, le secteur du bâti, intégrant un certain nombre de mesures visant l'atténuation. Voilà un peu pour ce qui est de l'environnement en Côte d'Ivoire. Is the hand of my...
Thank you so much, Jean-Pascal. That's fascinating to hear and very encouraging that you're looking to be integrated with your policies and your NDC and seeing how they can be joined up in an effective way. Thank you for that. If I can come to Mr. Ali, in Somalia, is it possible for climate considerations to get bandwidth among these so many competing priorities, things like access to energy, let alone decarbonisation? And how is this built environment being viewed in this context? And what measures are being taken to help businesses, families adapt to this changing climate? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Ali Hassan from Ministry of Environment and Climate Change of Somali Federal Government. I'm very happy being attended to this panel discussion about the construction and climate change related issues. Thank you all of you for your kind listening. As you all know, Somalia lays on Horn of Africa. Somalia has recently joined to East African Community, which exists or consists around 7 countries around. Somalia has a long history of, destructions and different wars which they faced since 1991. Somalia is one of the least developed countries in the world. Somalia is now getting better. Somalia is now coming back to the world. Somalia has developed its own good governance with the support of the international community. Somalia is meeting with all constraints and challenges such as the least developing countries meeting. Somalia is between drought and flood. Might be wonderful. Some seasons Somalia is under flood, a situation which hit very severe, and sometimes it hit by drought, which has make all it severe. So all these Somalia is meeting constraints of challenges of life. Somalia, on the other hand, is making improvement at the security at the construction site. Somalia is the Somali diaspora is returning back to Somalia and making long buildings and good construction is good real estate is in the country. As well as that, Somalia is getting help from the international community such as an African Development Bank and World Bank, assisting to create, cheaper and buildings and resell again to the community. All these are the developments and the constraints that we are facing. For this stage we are now, we can say we are recovering and coming back to normal. At the terms of legislations and the regulations, Somali government is making good progress at the National House Act and National Housing Guideline, National Housing Policy, National Housing Strategy, National Environmental Act. All those are working together in order to get Somalia rebuilt in a good manner and the best, decarbonization method. Somalia is making, working at the side of energy and to tackle about the climate change. Somalia community, as I said, are facing droughts and floods. These are, caused by the climate change somehow. And we haven't had every year to happen drought and flood. So for this to happen causes by the climate change. And Somalia is doing its best to tackle about the climate change, and this could bring, the Somali communities to receive stability and resilience for their housing and construction. Somalia mainly have their people do not have buildings and construction. They might leave sometimes the premises of the government. Recently, the government requested to move from the government's land in order the government works their premises, and the community said, we don't know where to go. It's a big question. Maybe the international community, here is my problem I'm saying. Also, there is, we have meeting Somalia lack of awareness and poor skills of construction capacity building. We have experienced in the last year some long buildings collapsed and caused the death of a human who were living under that premise. And that accident were 2 to 3 accidents published in whole magazines all over the world, and that causes lack of knowledge and less capacity building. So for us, we are here to not forget to request from the international community, consultants, engineers, to look at Somalia and work with the public-private partnership companies who are working on the ground in Somalia to assist them their skills and what best to do to build when building premises. When I come back to climate change, Somalia is making progress, and we are doing giving people growing and awareness, and just making a consultant to those companies who are only thinking about economic benefits. We are also doing to release, and we have released the regulations. And you all know when regulations are set, the implementation also is a problem to make them adopt with the rule and regulations set by the government. And we are in the process of to win our implementation process and that level. Also, we are doing as a government to be our people in the best manner of land use management in order to avoid habitat loss and ecosystem. All this is what my government is doing, and we are very happy being here. And when it's back, we will share with my government all information we have collected from here. And that is what I wanted to contribute to this panel discussion. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ali. If I can ask the audience to start thinking about any questions that you may have, we may have time for just one or two questions. So while we have the privilege of our esteemed experts here, please do take advantage of that and think, what's the burning question in your mind? And while you're thinking, let me just come back to each of the speakers in turn to ask, maybe you can say what one of the key takeaways that you are taking from this meeting away, and what action you will be taking, or what will be your kind of top priority for the rest of 2024. Jamie.
Thanks, Sarah, and really fascinating to hear from Jean-Pascal and Ali Mohammed on the realities in those two countries. So for us, priorities, seizing this political momentum, right? This is really important, and it's got to turn into action at the national level. All, as has been discussed richly today, buildings are deeply local issues. And so that's got to turn into national level action, and any way we can help with that and give it momentum and turn policy change into accelerate the reaction to that policy change with capital is our ambition. And then specifically on the focus, we're really keen to ramp up the engagement on the resilience side of the business. We're really thrilled by the impact that the combination of sort of levers on change of financing and capacity building and the tools of EDGE has had in market movement. We're really keen to achieve the same thing on the resilience side with the Building Resilience Index. So we're sort of busy talking to partners on that piece as well.
Thank you. Jean-Pascal, one of your key takeaways from this meeting, or actions, priorities for 2024?
Pour nous, c'est aujourd'hui le passage à une échelle industrielle de la production. Voilà, aujourd'hui, il faut vraiment des investissements pour que la transformation, justement, s'appuie sur une industrialisation qui aujourd'hui stagne encore. C'est le lieu pour moi de rappeler aux différents partenaires qu'il y a vraiment un marché aujourd'hui à conquérir en Côte d'Ivoire, parce que le besoin, il est énorme. Il y a des facilités que l'État a mises en place, notamment sur la ténure foncière, notamment sur l'importation de certains matériaux et sur la délivrance de toute la paperasse administrative. Après, ce n'est pas seulement de venir investir pour faire de l'argent, mais c'est de créer une nouvelle communauté de développement qui veut que de plus en plus nous travaillons avec les universitaires. Donc la Côte d'Ivoire est vraiment propice aux partenaires pour développer, pour investir et surtout pour pouvoir apporter notre modeste part à la, comment j'allais dire ça, à la lutte contre le changement climatique. Voilà. This was my answer.
Thank you. Thank you. And Ali Mohammed, what's your key takeaway from this meeting, or your top priority for the rest of the year? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. This is really a great conference, which has its great influence once we back and all over the world when they go back home. Somalia is, as you all know, lays on the Horn of Africa. Somalia is a very good terminal according to the world traffic issue, from far Asia to Europe to Middle East to Africa. Somalia hosts a lot of ships and airplanes passing through its airbase, and the air, also the ocean and the Red Sea. Somalia is very crucial for all the world to invest. Somalia is preparing to be one of crucial countries in the world. As we all know, Somalia has the longest coastline in Africa, estimated in 3,333 kilometers. Somalia has all those potential. Somalia has a long beach line which tourists can come, and Somalia is making progress on the stability and the security with the international community support. Somalia will meet to wave, with full open-handed welcoming to invest by all stakeholders from the world. Somalia has potential of investing all international companies with the wealth. Somalia government is making integration with all international partners close and the second to come to Somalia. Somalia is heading to make job creation for their people with the support of the international community. Somalia is going to be where all the people rest. Somalia is going to be a beautiful country, a green country in the future. That's where we are heading to, and my government is preparing to be like that. Somalia, as a Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, we have set several mitigations like environmental impact assessment to assist the construction companies. We have also, as I said recently, we have set the regulations and the standards. We have also set the promoting sustainable construction practices, public awareness and education. That's what we are doing on the ground. But we are appealing to all in this conference and the international community who are hearing my voice. Somalia needs your help. Somalia needs in a special eye than all other countries. Somalia was in terrible and destruction around 3 decades. Somalia now is facing and heading to make progress and development. And that's all what I think will be most priority which we will have. And the 2 priorities that we can, or 3 priorities that we can mention is first, job creation, then and supporting Somalia housing, since the people are most and 70% of them are less of a housing system. And the third is Somalia requires to receive from the world standing to its government shoulder to shoulder. And thank you for your listening. That is the priorities we are expecting to keep in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So if I can now turn to the audience, does anybody have a question for our panelists? Please, there's some microphones just there. Maybe we can, I think there's 3 questions. If you could take the microphone, and we'll just take them we'll take the 3 very quickly, and then some answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Engineer Kenneth, CEO National Housing Uganda. My question is to Jami, IFC. When you look at Africa and the rest of the world, these are 2 worlds. The rest of the world is talking renovation. Development has already happened. But then Africa is talking about development. We also are looking at fast rising population, which are eating up the land. From the financing perspective, what is your strategy to make sure that now you can curb this development in Africa, because there's going to be high demand for materials for construction, but also the actual physical development. Financing is extremely expensive. What is the strategy from IFC? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take the second question as well.
Hello, my name is Anthony Nahas. I'm working as a consultant on green buildings and green building neighborhoods. My question is also about financing to Mr. Ferguson, specifically about green bonds. I know that the World Bank has issued green bonds. Would you be so kind as to talk to us about green bonds as one of the principal solutions for financing of green buildings and green building neighborhoods? Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll take this third question here and then we'll go to answers. Thank you.
So I'll be brief. We've heard today about finance technology and how that meets human beings. I know that Jamie, the IFC, has the EDGE tool, which I like, but it requires an ecosystem to work. And I understand. So my question is, in Côte d'Ivoire and in Somalia, when you talk about needing to train and to create the jobs, are people incentivized correctly to get the jobs training using the IFC EDGE tool to be able to build better homes?
Great, thank you. Well, let's start with Jamie. Maybe you can talk about the issue of finance being so expensive. The rates are so high in less developed countries. There's many issues, currency risk, etc. And also, if you can address the point on green bonds. Thank you.
Yeah, with pleasure. So thank you, Engineer Kenneth. So we're coming about this from two sides, supply and demand, right? And we're trying to support financing for the supply of housing, in particular affordable housing. And there, sometimes, you know, even in developed countries, affordable housing has to be a public-private partnership because subsidy is a necessary piece of it. And so we're engaging there in PPPs. And then on the demand side, it's about building a mortgage market. And ultimately, mortgages rely on a local capital market where there's sufficient liquidity and depth for long-term local currency financing. And there, in several countries, we have financed a local mortgage refinance company, which allows the banks to provide mortgages and offload them and refinance them into an entity that can issue bonds in the capital markets. And that has a sort of multi-benefit because it's both generating the long-term capital for mortgage financing, but it's also helping build the local capital market, which, you know, in terms of climate response, ultimately one of the great challenges is a lot of climate investment, not just housing, requires long-term local currency financing. And so building capital markets locally is key. Green bonds, we're heavily involved. Thank you, Anthony. We're involved as an issuer, so IFC is a AAA entity itself and actually helped ignite that market. There'd been sort of the odd small issuance, but we were the first one to come along with a large $1 billion issuance, and it was in 2012, I think it was, and it was sold in minutes, and it got the whole market really woken up to the potential of this. So we're an issuer, but more importantly, we're also, that's sort of the back end to look at the capital markets. We're also very busy at the front end operationally. So we're a buyer of labeled bonds. We're a big capacity builder. We are training regulators across the emerging markets. We have a sustainable banking finance network of banking regulators to build capacity on the regulatory side. And then we're building capacity amongst banks. We've trained, I can't remember the numbers, but hundreds of banks across multi-tens of countries to help them issue. And then we're a buyer and have put together multi-billion-dollar funds with fund managers to get liquidity. So again, you know, we're an investor, but we think systemically. So we're trying to build that market from the supply and the demand side. And plenty of guidance as well. We've issued on green bonds, blue bonds, sustainability-linked bonds, you name it. Look on our website, there's plenty there.
Thank you. And yeah, maybe we can turn to Jean-Pascal and Ali Mohammed to talk about this point about capacity building and training to have that enabling environment for these tools and standards to actually work and be implementable. Thank you.
Merci pour cette question. Effectivement, aujourd'hui, la transition urbaine qui nous impose aujourd'hui de regarder notre façon de construire ou de reconstruire nos territoires est une opportunité. C'est vrai que c'est un problème, c'est un défi où nous disons en Côte d'Ivoire, par exemple, comment construire 8000 logements avec une capacité actuelle qui ne va pas au-delà des 25 000 logements par an. Mais justement, c'est en cela que nous devons être imaginatifs, nous devons être innovants. Et c'est toute une chaîne de valeurs qu'il faut mettre en place. Depuis la formation académique. Aujourd'hui, est-ce que ce n'est pas un secteur dans lequel on doit former plus d'ingénieurs que des cheminements classiques qui certes sont des besoins, mais qui ne répondent pas à l'urgence du moment? Première des choses. Seconde des choses, c'est en termes de projection. Il faut que nous quittions l'urgence, quand bien même nous sommes dans l'urgence. Alors, c'est de commencer à planifier de nouvelles stratégies qui permettent justement de ne pas être à chaque fois en train de recréer la roue, mais plutôt en train de se dire, nous suivons un chemin que nous avons préparé depuis un certain moment. Je vais peut-être distraire un peu ce que je veux dire, mais nous avons des valeurs, des forces internes. Quand vous prenez l'architecture africaine, elle est naturellement aérée. Elle a naturellement de la conservation de la température. Et c'était des choses qui étaient faites depuis des lustres où les femmes étaient aussi actives que les hommes. Et donc aujourd'hui, je profite pour souhaiter à toutes les dames ici présentes bonne journée internationale de vos droits, mais pour dire que c'est justement chacun qui doit pouvoir emmener quelque chose. Et si on veut aujourd'hui maximiser l'autonomisation des femmes, mais justement c'est une opportunité pour leur permettre de créer des richesses, de travailler sur certains matériaux. Et donc c'est un travail d'ensemble que nous sommes appelés à faire. On a deux petites idées aussi à partager avec vous qu'on va essayer de mettre en Côte d'Ivoire. C'est de créer un institut des nouveaux métiers de la ville. Parce que tout ce que nous allons faire, si on veut de la durabilité, c'est d'avoir des hommes qui sont capables aujourd'hui de les mettre en place et demain de permettre à d'autres personnes de le faire. Donc ça aussi, c'est des expériences qu'on peut faire. Mais en même temps, il faut décloisonner la chaîne d'intervention. Que les politiques ne restent pas seulement au niveau de nos États, de nos gouvernements, mais il faut donner la capacité en termes de skilling, la capacité en termes financiers à nos collectivités territoriales, parce que c'est dans les villes que les gens sont mal logés, et ce n'est pas, excusez-moi, la présidente de la République ou bien dans les bureaux de ministère, c'est auprès de ces élus locaux-là. Et donc, il faut vraiment leur donner de pouvoir jouer tout leur rôle. Ça va passer par des transferts de compétences suffisamment forts. Et aussi que les populations se disent que ce n'est pas seulement l'affaire des gouvernants. C'est une affaire de tous. J'allais terminer, avec votre permission, par un léger plaidoyer, mais envers nous Africains. Aujourd'hui, il est indéniable que nous ne sommes pas les premiers pollueurs du monde. On demande que ceux qui ont pollué, effectivement, viennent contribuer fortement, mais c'est d'abord notre territoire, c'est d'abord notre pays, c'est d'abord nos générations futures, c'est d'abord nos enfants. Il faut que nous-mêmes, nous nous mettons en avant. Si on a de l'aide, ça sera tant mieux. Mais il faut que nous-mêmes, nous travaillions ensemble sur ces mécanismes-là. Tous ceux qui veulent venir sont les bienvenus chez nous. Merci.
Thank you. Thank you. And turning to Ali Mohammed for the last word on capacity building and jobs and creating the enabling environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate my friend being reminded me to say all women in the world happy Women's Rights Day today. And that's a great day for us. We always remember and keep in mind. To come back to the last question to be answered is we highlight the priority that it has to give support to the local ground is crucial and essential. And as the climate change, those who are invested all over the world, the main industries and factories, has been said behind the climate change, and we are meeting to claim for loss and damage. And that will have been talked in COP28 in Dubai, and it's a topic which always raises among the international communities whenever they meet. To come back, the priorities which we need still is giving support to job creation. When I say job creation, is you might see so many number of youth who have learned something, but they don't know where to work and where to go to work. And that sometimes result them to decide to immigrate to other countries looking for, better life and jobs. So it has a triangle problem. And when we just close our eyes not to help them to receive on their ground jobs, they decide to immigrate and they bring all their heaviness to other countries, and which they might not know it is weather, climate and behavior and the character of those people living in. So when it's given opportunity to them at their ground, they will do something. Innovation is on the ground, and they will help to participate and be part of their country's, development. So that is why I'm saying job creation. Still, the experience and the knowledge is not enough in terms of the new technology that the world is experiencing these years and recently. We need also to receive those technologies on our ground and educate and teach and train to our youths in order them to be capable to do something on their country. That is the side of job creation. The side of investment also, this is the one I talked recently. It will create a youth to be stable at their, at the first point and stay their homes. And also it will help them to be part of their manpower of their country and to participate in the rebuilding. Somalia has not infrastructures like all over the world. Recently, as you might hear, Somalia lost so many bridges due to the floods which took place November and October and December last year. The floods hit so many districts in Somalia and caused the collapse of so many bridges. You can see people living in that bank, and some people living in this bank, they cannot cross one to another. That causes so many small adolescents and youngest lose their lives when they try to cross the river, because the bridges were lost for the last quarter 4 of last year. And that is also another catastrophe which I'm going to share with you to aware and note, and maybe in the future you might give consideration to help Somalia to rebuild such that bridges. That bridge is mostly built by Netherlands in 1978-75. And now we keep in mind some of international governments, cooperations will help us, but we don't know who exactly they are. For us, still we don't know. But for last time, Netherlands has built for us 1978-75 that bridges, which collapsed quarter 4 of last year. I'm not talking about so many decades before. It is recently quarter 4. So that's all my contribution of today. I have so many issues to talk, but the time is not allowing for me. Thank you once again.
Thank you. So thank you to all of the audience. We've gone over time, so we will wrap up now. But what we've heard today is some huge challenges that governments are facing here, and that we need a real multitude of very nuanced approaches across all of these dimensions that I mentioned at the outset. So, but we do need approaches that bring all parts of this really complex system on the journey to net zero together. So please join me in thanking the panel for this, and I wish you a great remainder of the conference. Thank you. Oh, the closing plenary is just about to start, so if people could please make their way to the main auditorium. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Ella.